Ladies and gentlemen, it's the Nighttime Show, live from the Hollywood studios of the Improv in California. Tonight, the Nighttime Show welcomes our head writer, Matt Walker, our very special guest, legendary comedy writer of the Emmys, the Tonys, the Oscars, and the Star Wars Holiday Special, Bruce Vilanch. And now, the man who put your asses in those seats tonight, the star and host of the Nighttime Show, Stephen Kramer Glickman. Yes!
I wish people listening could see the way he clenches his fists when he does it, too.
He's so...
Mike Black is great.
I have to get pumped up to do it.
You're a terrific announcer.
This is the most work I do all day.
You're great. You're great. That's wonderful. We are so incredibly excited. This is a huge honor. Sometimes, we get some wonderful guests on our show, but this is like an exceptional. This is an exceptional.
Wonderful. Oh my God!
This is an exceptional situation having you here.
I'm sitting here in the shadow of exploding Buddha.
All of us. You should have.
No one ever got that worked up. Ed McMahon made a tidy living and he never got that worked up.
I'll have you know I burned 17 calories doing that.
That's the workout of the day.
Yeah, that's really the Andy Richter diet.
Yeah, exactly.
Careful, he'll trademark it right away. Right out from under your ass.
As soon as he heard that, he got onto the website.
That's it. I'm doing it. I found a way.
Oh my God! Well, look, when we heard that we had gotten you to come do the show, it's such a huge honor for us, especially because we're all comedy guys and we love we sit around with a bunch of other comedy guys and we write jokes and try to write stuff all the time. But I mean, come on, man.
I've been doing it for a very long time.
For a long time. And you've been making people laugh, for a very, very long time. And I want to go back to the first job that you're credited for on IMDb. The first job that you're credited for there is the Paul Lynde Halloween special, which
really?
I've seen. All of us have seen that special.
It's a great, it's a cult classic.
It's great.
It's
really
one of my handful of cult classics. But that Star Wars, which thank you for the shout out.
Oh, we're talking about that one.
Yeah. And the Paul Lynde the Paul Lynde Halloween show.
Was that your first actual job? What was your first actual job in Hollywood?
Well, I was writing for a lot of different things, but I wasn't living here. I was living in Chicago writing for the Trib, and I was writing for things like Sonny and Cher, and I was writing for comedians. But what got me out here was the Manhattan Transfer. They had a summer replacement show. They replaced Cher. They used to do that on the networks when they had big variety shows. They would take the summer off and they'd put a little variety show. So Manhattan Transfer was an act I worked with because Bette Midler's dresser. I worked with Bette Midler for 45 years.
Oh my God!
And which is difficult because she's only 36, but I'm contractually obligated to point that out. But she had a dresser, a woman named Fayette Hauser, who was one of the original Cockettes. She was one of the few female members of the Cockettes. And her brother started the Transfer, Tim Hauser, the late Tim Hauser. And we put their act together, and Bette's manager came in, and Ahmet Erdogan came down and saw them, and they got a record deal, and they wound up doing this wonderful stage act. And the guy who was running CBS at the time saw them and bought them as a summer TV show.
Wow.
And so I came out here to write that show because I had written their act. And it was totally bizarre because I don't know if you know the Transfer, but it was like, four kids in their 20s pretending they were big band singers.
Yeah.
And this is in the 70s, and there was a great nostalgia craze going on. So it was in no way relatable to anything anybody would. I mean, it was like it was a real music kind of Greenwich Village sort of act. And we spent all the money on their costumes, all those things. We went to Western Costume and raided the place and, pulled out things Ginger Rogers wore.
Oh my.
And it was that. It was a great show. We had absolutely no money. So we had one guest every week. We had comics who were getting started. Gabe Kaplan.
Oh my God. A very nice and up and coming guy.
David Brenner.
Oh yeah.
And then we had two comics who were just getting ended. Carl Ballantyne, who was about 112, and Professor Irwin Corey.
Wow.
So we had real diversity, and we had no money for a music act, but Bob Marley and the Wailers had come to L.A. and nobody would put them on television.
Oh my
Really?
God!
Partially because they would smoke blunts while they were doing their act.
Yeah,
And
sure.
it was felt in 1975 that this perhaps was not the best thing for the kids.
Right.
But we put them on, so it was amazing.
Oh, my
I mean,
God.
when you consider it was like Manhattan Transfer, singing
Yeah.
boop bop boop bop, and here's Bob Marley in the back. It was a fabulous show. So that was my first show, and it was a huge critical success, but nobody watched it. We were on opposite 60 Minutes, and
Did you get to hang out with Bob Marley?
yes,
was that
absolutely.
like?
I don't remember, which is how I know I was there.
Yeah.
Because everybody was just absolutely. We were completely blotto, and the one thing I do remember is that he had two women behind him, and they had like Erykah Badu hair.
Oh, yeah.
hair. They had like I said the laundry on their head. I mean these gigantic headdresses, which were the Jamaican kind of look. But that was where they kept all the ganja.
Just pulled them out.
Yeah, and when we say, "Would you like another?" I would say, "Yes." And here comes, and she'd pull it out of her hat.
Wow.
I said, this is amazing. And so you got a rabbit in there. And you could do Carl Valentine's act.
I like the presentation. Here comes.
That's all I remember. We set off the smoke alarm at Television City.
Yeah.
And we were, and they came running from the Carol Burnett show, which was across the aisle. At CBS they have like four big, and Bold and the Beautiful and Hung in the Breathless or the others. And then we were, The Price is Right was
Match
on.
Game must have been there too.
And that's an indoor.
Match Game was not at the time.
Okay.
At the time, it was someplace else. Although I did Match Game, a revival of Match Game.
I remember. Yeah.
At that same studio. Yeah.
This is the CBS that's down the street. That's around the corner.
Fairfax.
Yeah.
This is
Fairfax.
that's an indoor. That's an indoor.
It's all indoors.
All
Yeah.
indoors. Yeah. This place is so
So
cool.
you
I
say-
know it's like an old radio studio,
Place is
that
so
was
cool.
became a television studio, but the same shows are there. I mean, that were there.
Price is Right.
They're
all that
best,
shit.
except for Carol, and she quit.
Yeah.
Wow.
We did Hollywood Squares actually there too.
Did you
on
really?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
On the same stage as Carol, who was
Wow.
because that's the only studio that's got an actual dedicated theater, an audience.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, and so you've seen a million shows. And whenever you see like old TV shows and they cut to the audience,
shot there.
It was shot in that one place. They call it the Jack Benny Theater because he was the first one to use it and to shoot his show there. But Carol shot all of her shows and ironically, all the game shows that never show you the audience.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Except for Price is Right, where it's, come on down. So they're running,
Yeah.
And they also, they get excited and they throw up. And
Where now you mentioned before we were on the air that you're originally from.
Patterson, New Jersey,
Patterson,
which
New
nobody
Jersey.
claims anymore.
Nobody's playing.
No, it's the place has gone full circle. The synagogue where I was bar mitzvahed is now a mosque.
No, it's not. Is it really?
That is as full a circle as you can go.
Yeah. You know what? The synagogue I was bar mitzvah that is now a church, and I tell
Wow.
people that
It's a
my
Protestant church
synagogue.
now.
Oh, we've gone
converted.
you one better. It's converted. We've gone
They
you
finally
one
read
better.
the second half of the book. Is what happened.
There we
They
go.
said this is we'll buy from the infidels and we'll transform. But it's Patterson, which was a booming town many years ago. It has a reputation. It's totally tied into criminals. Hurricane Carter was Patterson.
Yeah.
And my high school principal, Jolton Joe Clark, with a baseball bat, was Morgan Freeman in a movie called Lean On. Not
Oh,
Lean
yeah.
On. Is
Oh
it
my
Lean On Me?
God.
I think Lean on Me.
Lean
Yeah.
on
Yeah,
Me.
Lean on
Yeah,
Me.
that was my high school, and it was that was the story of what happened in my high school as the city went down.
Wow.
Whoa.
Yeah. So Patterson now today today there was an explosion, which they said they had to run to say it was not a meth lab. It was bad plumbing. The house blew up, but it's not a meth lab.
Right.
Because that's exactly where your mind goes when you say, "Why there's a nice little house?"
Do you think they just have a fishbowl of excuses for not a meth
Yeah,
lab?
right, exactly.
What do we call it this week? A toaster oven.
I don't know. Yeah, exactly. You can't figure out what it was.
What, now you've got to have some funny people in your family. Did you have any funny relatives or people that were around you when you were a kid?
Yeah, I did. My mother had fabulous timing, and she had an uncle, my great uncle Mickey, who was a Catskills comic. He wasn't successful. His name was Mickey Landau. He didn't do very well.
Right.
But their side of the family my mother's side of the family was hilarious. They were all shicking each other every family meal was, more shtick.
Oh yeah,
So,
who would tell the best stories and coming up with
they all can you top this?
Oh,
yeah.
yeah.
I mean, so I grew up in that atmosphere, but and that's where I think I got a lot of the time. I can feel myself talking, and I'll say when I did Hairspray. And I became the woman. I became the mother.
Yeah.
And I put the makeup on the first day. I looked in the mirror and I said, "It's my Aunt Pauline."
Oh my God!
I looked so much like it because it's set in 1962.
Yeah,
so it's as I remember Pauline from that period. Yeah, back then when women would go shopping and they'd wear white gloves to go to the supermarket.
Yeah. Oh my God! How
So
much?
weird.
When did you do? When did you do Hairspray?
I did it about 12 years ago. I did it 2004 and 5. I did a year on the road, the first national tour. I played the Pantages here for 10 weeks. And then after a year of that, they moved me after Harvey Firestein left. I went to Broadway and did it for a year.
Oh, that's cool.
And then it continued, for another 4 years after that.
Didn't we have from your favorite show, Dear John?
Oh, Jerry Burns.
Jerry Burns.
Jerry
was
Burns
in.
was in it, but not with me. He played Wilbur.
Yeah.
And I think actually he played opposite the late great John Pinette, who followed me into the role.
Great.
And George Wendt eventually did it.
Yeah.
Oh wow, I didn't know George.
Yeah,
Wendt did.
Peter Scolari had played that part. I played it with a guy named Todd Sussman, who's wonderful, but nobody knows him. I mean, he's basically a voiceover guy.
Oh, okay.
Mike Black was friends with Panette.
Yeah, and
Panette was wonderful.
he was he talked about during when he was doing it.
Yeah.
They made him shave his eyebrows.
Yes, right.
And he was like,
goes with the territory.
He was like, I almost didn't do it just because of that. Because when you've shaved your eyebrows and you go out to the pool, everyone's like, out of the pool, kids.
That's so true. Whoopi has no eyebrows, and when I told her I was shaving my eyebrows, she said, "I got you covered. I'll show you all the tricks so they don't grow back. Here's what you do."
Matt, I forgot to tell you, last night I had a little fireball moment.
Another one?
Yeah, well, I've been having a lot of fun recently.
They're a lot of fun. They're great. I love the fireball.
They really are. They really are. Glazer, you know anything about this? About these fireball moments?
Oh, real fun time.
Oh, they're so great. What happens is when you drink fireball whiskey, then, things just get a little crazier. Like life just gets a little brighter and more exciting.
So where were you?
Well, I was at a Sportsman's Lodge. You know that place? The
used
old...
to do stand up on a patio.
Oh, God.
Where you get heckled by buses driving by.
Yeah. So that's what happened is I was there and I was hanging out, just relaxing. I had a couple drinks, a couple of shots of Fireball, and I took a little wander around. I was doing a little wander into this little forest behind Sportsman's Lodge. Do you know there's a forest back there? Yeah, there's a forest over
You
there.
find so many weird forests in
Oh,
LA.
yeah, there's
It's
a lot
amazing.
of forest. There's a lot of greenery out here. I'm wandering around through the forest. I'm having a nice little time. I have a bottle of Fireball with me, as per usual. And I'm walking around, and what do I see? But I saw a fairy.
Really?
Yeah, it was just floating there.
Did you talk to it? What happened?
Yeah, I was like, "Hey, are you real?"
I'm real. I'm just as real as you are.
Wow, you're so bright.
Oh, well, that's because I came from heaven.
Oh my gosh, that's incredible.
Yeah.
Is that where all fairies are from?
Well, we live everywhere. Some live in heaven, and some live in the United Arab Emirates.
Oh, I didn't realize that's where they live. That's so fascinating. Hey, so what are you doing out here in the forest? You having a good time?
Well, I came for you.
You did?
Yes,
Well-
I came with a message.
Oh, you did? What's the message?
Little Mr. Glickman hopping through the forest, scooping up the field mice and popping them on the head. You can't do that. Put down your fireball, time to sober up.
Oh, I love that song. Hey, would you like, hey, Fairy, would you like a shot of this Fireball whiskey?
Yeah.
All right, here you go. Try it out.
Oh, wow, that just goes right down.
Yeah, so do I. And then I made sweet, sweet love to that fairy in the woods. And it was the greatest experience of my life. Fireball whiskey. You never know what's going to happen. All right, let's get back to the show. So, how did you make the jump from New Jersey to the big leagues? Like, what was the big move then?
You know, I was a child actor. I was never a child star, or we'd be having this conversation in rehab.
Yeah.
But I was a child actor. I did a lot of stuff around New York, and footage long buried. It outlived the Jay Leno show, so he can never use it against me. And so I was always in the theater. I was always acting, and my parents were scared because they thought I'd never make a living, so they wanted me to have something to fall back on. And they suggested newspapers. Little did they know that they would all disappear.
They're all done. Yeah.
Really, show business is eternal. Newspapers are gone. So I got a journalism degree and a theater degree, and I wound up at the Chicago Tribune writing, and I met Bette Midler, and I started writing for her.
Oh man!
And then I began writing for a lot of other people who came through.
Now, did you know Gene Siskel back then?
Yeah, I was the number 2 movie critic. I was his. Roger was across the street. Roger read it sometimes, and Gene was at the Trib, and I was the second string. You should pardon the expression. So I got to review things like The World's Greatest Athlete.
Yeah.
With Jan Michael Vincent in a loincloth. So I had to see it several times to make sure I appreciated all the nuance in the review. And pictures like that I got to review. And I was like I was the rock critic. I was like the kind of go-to feature guy. I mean, anything that was kind of light and ridiculous, you know, I would.
Yeah.
I would get. They sent me to be to trade places with a housewife, and to you know, I was called Mr. Mommy, and then John Hughes, who at the time was an ad executive in Chicago at Leo Burnett, took it and turned it into Mr. Mom.
Oh, really?
Yes.
So the Michael Keaton movie came from that.
Which he confessed to me one night.
He flat out told you.
He said, you know, I read that Mr. Mommy column, and I thought that'd be a good idea for a movie. I said, so did I. I couldn't sell it. He said, well, what can I say?
Yeah, he didn't confess and hand you a check. He just confessed.
He didn't hand me a check. He didn't give me, you know, a quarter of an eighth of a point, or anything like that. But I just thought it was nice that he said that. I mean, his thing was totally different, you know, from mine because. You know, because Michael Keaton played it as a straight man, raising his own kids. But I swapped. I actually had to move into the house with the husband and the kids, and she moved into my apartment.
So you did that wife swap show.
We did the wife swap exactly.
Before.
Right. Yeah.
I'd be more upset about that.
Yeah,
I know. You didn't get any.
That's
of that
a complete rip-off.
wife swap money.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Now that I think of it, really. It's just bad lawyering.
Wow. Did you? I'm sure you've been hired many times to do punch up on things and to help make things funnier. Are you allowed to talk about it?
No. That's part of it is you can't, because unless you're credited, and you never get a credit on that stuff because unless when you do television. When you do like sitcoms, you go in and you're the Thursday guy,
right?
You know where they've done the network run through on Wednesday, and they have spots where they have bad jokes that don't work, and they need fresh eyes to come in and come up with stuff. So I frequently do that, and then you get some kind of a creative consultant billing or something like that.
Have you done that recently? Are you doing that recently?
Not too much, no. Not too much because now because almost everything is room written. Now I find that kind of stuff is that they have a core group of writers and they do what they do, and occasionally they'll say we need help, but they don't. You know, most of the time they're not working on the same kind of schedules as they used to. They don't have to churn out as many episodes of anything as they used to have to do because it's gone from broadcasting to narrowcasting.
Yeah.
So.
All right. Well, look, we got to talk about on the Paul Lynde Halloween special.
Yes.
Okay.
Vital.
Because you got to work with Margaret Hamilton.
I did. And Billy Hayes, who was Witchy Poo.
Yeah.
And we had all the witches. Wow. They were all playing, I think, Paul's sisters.
My God. And Billy Barty is
Billy Barty was on it. Yeah.
Oh my God.
Yes.
Outrageous.
Doing Billy Barty's joke. I worked with him on several different shows. And
really?
On every one of these shows, he would wait for some very tall showgirl to come by, and he would just look at her and say, "I want to go up on you." And it worked every time. I mean, they would fall down in gales of laughter, and then he was at that point. He'd been around for a long, long time, but that was his joke.
That's great.
Yeah, he was on it, and Florence Henderson, that notoriously
wow.
slapstick clown, Florence, she was on it playing Barbara Walters. Don't ask. It was when Barbara Walters was anchoring the news.
No, Kiss was in that, weren't they?
Yeah.
Kiss, yes, it was the first television thing they had done, and we were all terribly depressed because they showed up with the president of their fan club, who was Ringo Starr's son. And the idea that Ringo was old enough to have
A son who's a big
right, yeah,
Kiss fan, yeah.
depressed all of us, who were like teenagers when the Beatles came over. Anyway, so they came, and of course, Paul had no idea. Who are they?
Yeah.
and then they came by. They had no makeup on, and he was not impressed at all. And then they got into the whole
costumes
slap, drag, and stink, and they ran their number. And I was sitting and watching with Paul, and Gene Simmons came over, and he was singing to Paul, and he stuck his tongue out, and he had this legendary tongue, and he just stuck the tongue out, and Paul looked at me and said, "He's a star."
Oh my God. Oh,
so he was just in love. He was just in love with him after that. Paul could do more with nothing. I mean, he Roots had just been on. We were shooting it, and I remember that Roots was on, and it was a gigantic thing. Everybody, had watched it.
Oh, sure.
And we were standing outside having a cigarette, and Paul was like in his Dracula outfit smoking a cigarette. And LeVar Burton, who was doing something else on the lot. This ABC had a studio in Los Feliz, and he was walking by, and Paul had just, and couldn't remember his name. And LeVar Burton's walking over and, pointing at him like, "Oh my God, it's Paul." And Paul says, looking at him, it says, "Reds." And it was the first time the word's ever been said with like 16 syllables.
Oh my God.
He was, and we had lunch in the commissary, and everybody would be in costume. Margaret Hamilton would have the green makeup, and, and Richie Poo and all that, sitting at this table with Roz Kelly. She was on it. Mm-hmm. She was actually an improv comic who she was Pinky Tuscadero.
Oh yeah, okay.
Fonzie's girlfriend.
Yeah.
And she was on it, and Tim Conway was on it. It was it was like
great.
it was star studded.
What was Hamilton like? What was Margaret like?
She was wonderful. She was old, and it was probably the last thing she did. Yeah. But she was so sweet and lovely. And, she, I guess it's no secret now, she led a secret double life.
Really?
Yes, she was a lesbian.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
And, and so we bonded immediately because I am one, too. But so she was just, she'd had this great career. She never stopped working, but all people knew about was was fun.
Yeah.
So when we sat down, I started talking about the other movie that I love her in, My Little Chickadee.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
That's W.C. Fields and Mae West.
Yeah.
Together. And Margaret Hamilton is, she's playing another version of Agnes Gulch, or whatever her name was from The Wizard of Oz. Mm-hmm. Just like the town prude who wants everybody to toe the line. Uh-huh. And that was her, like, her MGM character. I thought they shot that one at Universal. But, and she just had wonderful stories about the two of them. And no, she never gets to tell them because no one ever asked about that picture. Sure. They only asked about The Wizard of Oz.
Did she talk about W.C. Fields?
Yeah. Well, she told me all that. She said, he was a drunk and he hated the Jews.
The things we already know.
All the things I wanted to know. I was like, where does this bitter humor come from?
Oh, man.
And she said he was just horrible. But at the same time, there was something brilliant about him. And then, of course, I started asking other people about him because my interest was piqued. And he was quite a fascinating character, the way particularly because he was operating, he and Mae West were both operating against the code, which was, you couldn't do certain things because there was the production code that all the studios adhered to. And he would find ways of getting around it. He would shoot stuff that he knew they would cut out. Mm-hmm. And they would say, well, you've got to cut this out. And he would then say, well, if you let me, if I'll cut it out, if you let me keep this other thing, which is what he really wanted at the end of the picture. Because he knew he would never, for example, there's a fabulous outtake from The Bank Dick. The Academy has a whole bunch of these things in a vault where he's sitting in the front seat of a convertible with a very pretty girl. And she's squirming. And she's saying, he says, "What's the matter, my dear?" And she says, "Oh," she says, "I'm so uncomfortable." And then all of a sudden, she like turns, and this cat jumps up from under her and lands on the dashboard.
Yeah.
And Field says, "No wonder you're uncomfortable, my dear. You've been sitting on your pussy."
Oh my God!
This was never going to be in the movie.
Wow.
It was
1935 or something.
Yeah, right.
Oh
Filmed
my
it
God!
because he wanted another kind of joke that he wanted to get into, and his whole career was full of these kinds of things. And I sort of have to say,
man.
I mean, I always was a fan of his. Probably I wouldn't have liked him personally, but
Sure.
but he sure knew.
He had great work.
He knew how to rob a bank. He
Yeah.
really was.
Wow.
Man, oh man, that is brilliant.
That's fantastic.
I love that. Did you spend a lot of time with Paul Lynde
Yes, I
over
did.
the years?
I did. Well, because initially what happened was he was on Donnie and Marie. I was writing the Donnie and Marie show after the triumph of the Brady Bunch Variety Hour with Florence Henderson, and which we called One to Kneel and Seven Captains.
Oh my God!
Did I tell you I have
Very, very 70s
I have their
reference.
album of them singing.
You have the Brady.
Oh, they had an act.
They had like
toured.
4 albums. I have one of them on my MP3 player, and it comes up every now and then on random play, and I'm just like, I can't, like, I want to skip it because it's bad, but I'm just like, I have to listen. It's too good.
Yeah.
I know.
not to
I joke about it, but they have some talent. I mean, we joke that they had none, but like Marie McCormick is on Dancing with the Stars right now.
Yeah.
And she's killing it. And I mean, the younger ones were not singers and dancers, but they had like 2 or 3 of them. Who
Were you
actually-
friendly with most of their?
Yeah.
with most of
Oh,
the cast?
absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So after that, I did Donnie and Marie, and what had happened was Paul had a sitcom, and it opened huge, and then proceeded to tank. It died, and they canceled it, and they put him on Donnie and Marie, and they paid him as if he was the star of the show. So he was very he was miserable but happy about that. And I was writing, and I started writing for him, and he liked that, and so he would. He was doing Hollywood Squares at the time. He was the center square, and they would shoot it at night at NBC. And as we were leaving our KTLA, where we were shooting, he would grab me and he'd say, "Come with me to Squares. I haven't got shit." and we'd get in the car and we'd write jokes as we went over there. And so I was involved with Hollywood Squares without really being involved with Hollywood Squares.
Oh my God!
So so I did not. I mean. The most amazing thing about Paul is that he's been dead for 30 years.
Yeah.
He died like in 81 or something like that. And we still talk about him. And he had no idea. He thought because the guys he'd come up with, like Woody Allen and Mel Brooks, were huge movie stars. And he was not. He would be in a picture with Rock Hudson and Doris Day. Right. Yeah, but there was no Paul Lynde movie. And so he thought he was kind of, a failure. And he was drank a lot, and he would have 1 drink, he'd be hysterically funny, and then 2 drinks, it would be like the meeting of the Wehrmacht before they went to, before they go to Stalingrad. It was that. I mean, he was gloom and awfulness, and so it was hard to hang around him. I mean, I didn't envy his close friends because he was a heavy load. He was abusive and crazy and all of that. But if you could maintain him on the one cocktail, then he was truly hilarious and brilliant and funny. And then the second drink would kick in, and
Yeah.
you Jew fag, you think this is funny?
It'd be hard not to laugh while he's.
Well, that was the
Everything
other
in that
funny
voice
thing.
is funny.
That was the other. The voice itself was just hysterical. I mean, but he it annoyed him. I think that he was a flavor. I mean, all you needed him to do was to come in with 1 line. And
Right.
And that's it.
brilliant, but that's not the person who carries the show.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And whenever you try to do that, then you get it just doesn't seem to work.
Yeah, I think same thing kind of happened with Charles Nelson Riley. The same kind of thing where he's got that
They were
similar.
similar. And then on the female side, Alice Ghostly.
Yeah.
But there were strong supporting characters who would come in. I mean, even Tony Randall had a run at that kind of thing too. But with Paul, it was acute because it was a lot of that it was that delivery, that one delivery
Yeah.
that was so genius.
Did most of the Hollywood community at that time know that he was a gay man? Or
Oh yeah, everybody knew.
everybody knew.
I think most of the audience
Who didn't know?
We did a tour. When the show went on hiatus, we did a tour with Paul and Mimi Hines and Waylon Flowers and Madam, and we put this show together and we toured it to all these summer stock theaters and state fairs and things like that. And Paul was basically the MC of the show, and that he would swan around the stage in a gold lame caftan, and take questions from the audience. And every now and again, a woman would say, "Are you married?" And he would just look and say, "Lady, do you live in a cave?" Because everybody knew, but at the time, you never acknowledged that. It was like probably in your own families, you had the confirmed bachelor, uncle, who nobody ever really talked about, but when it came up, they would say, "Oh, he's a confirmed bachelor," and they would change the subject.
My grandmother would talk about Liberace and how someone should try to find a nice woman for him. And,
I mean, people think that that's bizarre, but truly, when you look at it, he was so over the top, that I'm sure real people thought this is an act, and he goes home to the wife and the kids like every other clown, like the guy for the Ringling Brothers doesn't sit at home except on The Simpsons in the full makeup. They figured this is his act, like it's Milton Berle's act,
flashy showbiz,
and in that period,
he's a
when gay people were not visible, when we kept ourselves, under the radar deliberately. It was a natural assumption that this was something that he had put together just for show.
Yeah.
And so now, with our change in perspective, people say, how could they not know about Liberace?
Yeah.
I mean, he was such a flamer. But that was his act. It was,
Is it do you think it's a better world now?
Well, yeah, I think everybody can be their authentic selves. I don't know. I mean, you can still... there's no shortage of people being over the top and crazy and all of that. So, but I mean, it's you don't have to live in a cave,
right? Thank God.
When you come off stage, you can be who you really are.
Yeah, that's the best. I love that. We got to talk about Star Wars Holiday Special. Holy God.
Really? Okay. Even though it was a long, long time ago in a galaxy far, far.
How involved were you with this project?
I was one of the writers. There were like 4 of us, maybe. Pat Proft was one, and Lenny Rips, the legendary Lenny Rips, was another one, and Ken and Mitzi Welch, who were songwriters who wrote a lot of the Carol Burnett stuff. Okay. We were all writers on the show together. It was George George Lucas had. They'd made Empire Strikes Back, but it hadn't been released yet, and he wanted to keep something on the bubble. He wanted to keep the whole idea on the bubble, and he had these 10 stories that he had written, and he told me at one point, he said, well, I'm going to make 6 movies, and he made 3 and quit, and then 30 years later, made 3 more. Yeah. But he said... but he sold all the stories into other formats, a novel and a graphic thing, and he had one story left, and he sold it to CBS as a variety special. Oh my God. And this was unfortunately the lead characters were the Wookiees, and the unfortunate part of it is that they look like me, but that's not as unfortunate as they speak no known language. Right. Yeah, and I mean, which is "Hi, honey, I'm home." So I say they sound like fat people having orgasms. Trust me, I know.
It's very accurate.
So we had. There's no dialogue, so we had other people. We had to bring in guest stars, and they would talk, and the Wookiees would answer in subtitles, and they translate and all that. So, and that was they were the lead character. They were all Chewie and. Han Solo and Princess Leia were, and Luke Skywalker were in the Millennium Falcon, trying to get back to the Wookiee planet for Life Day, the Wookiee national holiday.
Of course, Life Day.
Life Day, yes. And there was a song that George thought Life Day. He thought it would be like Festivus.
Did he get back to Kashyyyk?
Who wrote the Life Day song?
Ken and Mitzi Welch wound up writing it, as I recall. Yeah, they wrote it.
And there was Chewbacca's family back home.
It was Chewbacca's family on the planet, which was like treetops. They all lived in, and it was Mrs. Chewbacca, who was kind of like a fried blonde Wookiee, and little Chewie, and Grandpa Chewie, who was a silver-haired Wookiee, and they all had fantasies, and we got to see what their fantasies were.
Sure.
And Mrs. Chewbacca's fantasy was Julia Child, who was Harvey Korman as an alien with cooking with 7 arms, and little Chewie's fantasy was Cirque du Soleil, which had just started. It was the first time they were ever on television, so it was one of their simpler acrobatic things.
Cirque du Soleil.
That's amazing.
Wow. The director was a Canadian, and he brought them down. They were friends of his, so he brought just at the beginning.
Yeah, I remember that.
And Grandpa's fantasy was Cher, but Cher couldn't do it. At the last minute, she had something she had to back out, and Diane Carroll did it because she fit into the costume, and they were the same size. And so it was the first interracial, interspecies fantasy sequence on network television. Where's our parade?
Yeah.
And so we had also the little Wookiee liked Jefferson Starship, so they were on.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course.
We built this city. What city?
What is going on?
It's a giant forest. There's
But the best
city.
was the Millennium Falcon stopped on Tatooine to the cantina.
Yes.
Right.
And and all the aliens were at the cantina, and we made it a musical number, and the cantina was run by B. Arthur.
Yes.
Oh, yes.
It's the greatest thing ever.
Right. And she wanted to sing the Alabama song by Kurt Weill and Bertolt Brecht. She said, "This is my Brecht Weill song." I said, "No, it's your Weill Brecht song." And it didn't work out. We couldn't get the estate, Bertolt Brecht's estate said he didn't write this song, so B. Arthur should. So Maud, she was Maud.
Maud.
So Maud should sing it to a bunch of aliens. That was not Bertolt Brecht's intent.
I love the curator of the estate
I know.
saying that.
Having to look, can you imagine? They're sitting there in Berlin going, Ach du liebe Schatze, was ist das?
Oh my God.
Nine Chewbacca.
Nine Chewbacca, nine.
Oh my God. Was Lucas around a lot during this?
No.
Or-
At the beginning in the development, he pretends he wasn't around, but I remember him being. I remember him being in the office. No, well, he lives up, in Marin, but he was down here specifically for this, just to see how it was going. But he, after a while, he kind of like took his hands off it because his directorial pick didn't work out. He was a brilliant director, but he'd never done this kind of thing. Sure. And it was a huge production, and he was shooting it like a movie, and it's hard to shoot a variety show like a movie. And
B. Arthur's a bit intimidating, too, I'm sure. So.
It's like directing the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah.
And they put down the lamp and cross over there.
Oh my God.
But also he wasn't, her style. I mean, he wasn't.
Yeah.
And she was trying to do the comedy, but she wanted the thing to be dramatic too. And so the reason she did it was she wanted to sing on TV because at the time she was Maud, and Maud was a big hit. But before that, she'd done Broadway. She was
in
the
Fiddler on the
original
Roof.
Yenta Fiddler on the Roof and the original Vera Charles and May. And so she wanted to do a number, and nobody ever wanted to sing. And as a result of this thing, she wound up doing a network TV special where she sang.
Wow.
Which I didn't get to write, and I'd love to get my hands on it somewhere around.
Yeah.
It got buried. The Star Wars thing, what happened was somebody taped it, and when the internet happened, they posted it because Star Wars has always been an internet a fanboy thing. Yeah. And this generation of people who never saw the Star Wars movies in a theater grew up watching it on VHS and stuff like that. Found this special on the internet, and they said, "What the? How could he have done this?" And and so it became like
this legendary.
Before there was a Twitter rant. I mean, there'd be like emails everywhere, and people go, and I would get all these calls saying, "How did this happen? You were a part of it. Your name is."
How did this happen?
Well, there's a religion of
What
Star
can we
Wars
learn
people,
from
and
this?
they they felt personally betrayed that something like that had actually been done with their saga.
So much
Yeah.
worse has been done though. The Ewok movies.
Oh well,
Jar Jar
yeah.
Binks.
Yeah.
but this was all pre. Then he did the other three, and
Yeah.
and Jar Jar appeared. Yeah.
What was the response from the Star Wars Holiday Special in '78? Like, what was the response then?
Then it was a big hit. It was aired Thanksgiving weekend on Friday night, and it was a big success. The numbers were fantastic. But yet that was like a 3-network universe back then.
Yeah.
Maybe if Fox was even on, so 4
I had the
network.
Boba Fett cartoon in there.
Yes, and
That
that's
part was
that he
fantastic,
debuted
actually.
Boba Fett, and that became the most positive thing from it.
Yeah.
And it became I guess a Saturday morning show. But the reviews were ridiculous. I mean,
I'm sure.
the critics thought it was insane and said probably was they correctly said it was done by people who were stoned out of their mind. And we were. I mean, it was the 70s, you know. Carrie Fisher was wanted to do the Life song. She wanted Joni Mitchell to write it. And so she called Joni Mitchell and asked her to write the thing. And Joni Mitchell said, because she laughed.
Yeah.
She laughed up there too, just like she's saying. Way up. And so, and Carrie wound up. I think she does wind up doing it on the show, but she was like, I used to joke that she and I were snorting the Sweet and Low. we were just, you know, we were kind of gone. But that's what we did in the 70s. It was,
Didn't Carrie
it's
Fisher
not a secret.
Just sing the Life Day song recently.
I
Really?
don't know.
I believe.
I'm
don't know.
amazed.
I believe so. Recently, she sang
No
it
kidding.
at like an event.
Wow. I
I'm
wonder
almost
why.
positive. I think it was for something with Star Wars, but I'm pretty
Well,
sure that
it'd
she
be
was
odd
there.
because George, you know, if you mention it, he turns pale.
Oh,
He
yeah.
He wants nothing to do with it. He doesn't want it to go anywhere near his Star Wars.
Sure.
Yeah.
Well, for a while, like you mentioned it being on the internet.
He tried to wipe it off.
Oh, he
It
tried
would
to
be
wipe
up
it off.
for
Yeah.
like 5 minutes
Yeah.
and then gone.
He had,
you know?
yeah. Now he has bots who are doing it.
Yeah.
It used to be people who had to do that.
Well-
now it's bots.
It was one of those cult. I mean, that is a cult, you know, hit
Oh yeah.
piece, and same thing with the Halloween special. Are there other cult hit things in there that you've done that?
Oh, not of that enormity. The Brady Bunch Variety Hours. I consider that to be
Absolutely.
we like that because when the Brady Bunch movie and its sequel, a very Brady sequel, when they were made, you know, they were parodies of the Brady Bunch,
Yeah.
and they were, you know, big hits and they were funny, but because they were big hits, Lloyd Schwartz and his father Sherwood,
Yeah.
Yes.
who controlled the Paramount Brady Bunch, the original series,
Yeah.
had always embargoed. They didn't want anybody to see the Brady Bunch variety, and they controlled the underlying rights. They let go of the underlying rights so that Sid and Marty Krofft, who did the Brady Bunch Variety Hour, could sell it, and it showed up on Nickelodeon. It was all Paramount. Everything was Paramount.
Right.
So Nickelodeon's owned by Paramount. So Paramount, the show showed up on Nickelodeon.
Sure.
And people began calling me up saying, "Dude, I was watching this thing last night, and your name is on it." And it's like the Brady Bunch, and the dad's in a dress. And he's doing like a Gloria Estefan number. Yeah.
Wow.
Well, yeah, we put him in drag because Woody Allen.
Yeah.
Woody Allen used to write the Gary Moore show, and Gary Moore was not a funny guy. He introduced Carol Burnett. That was what he's remembered for. But he was a game show host.
One of the
But
all-time greats,
yeah,
by the way.
he had a variety show, and he had a sidekick, Durwood Kirby, whose son is Randy Kirby, who you may know, who was a stand-up and may still be. And Durwood Kirby and Gary Moore, they just weren't, you know, funny together.
Sure.
But they were the two stars of this variety show, and Woody was on the writing staff, and they would make him write sketches for the two of them. And he said, I said, "How did you survive doing that?" And he said, "Well, I put at the top of every sketch I wrote, Durwood and Gary enter wearing dresses."
Oh my God.
And they never would. He said, "I knew they wouldn't." So they'd cut it out. And when they would do the sketch and it would bombed, I would say, "Well, you didn't wear the dresses." It was right there in black and white on the top of the page. So
that would've made it work.
I took that, you know, I was a mentoring moment, and I said, "Okay, I'm going to put him in a dress. I'll put when you don't know what to do with somebody, with some awkward straight guy, put him in a
him in a
dress.
dress.
There you go.
And Absolutely, it wins every time. I put Andy Williams in a dress.
Wow.
At the Moon River Theater in Branson, Missouri.
Wow.
Oh my God! Did you really?
I did. Oh yeah, he came out and did a whole Latin number. It was the Carmen Miranda number. With a fruit basket on his head and all this kind of stuff. The whole thing. And then one night I was watching the Tonight Show and Mel Gibson was on saying, I was just in Missouri and I saw the Andy Williams show and he came out in a dress with the band. And that's when I thought something's wrong with Mel Gibson.
Yeah.
That's how you do.
Yeah.
That might have been what sent him over the edge.
My friend could be the first Lethal Weapon clue. Yeah. But yeah, so Robert Reed we put in the dress. We put in a dress, and actually we couldn't find a dress that fit him. And finally they found one at the Western Costume, and it was. I looked on the inside in the armpit. It had Tony Tennille.
Oh, wow.
It was her dress.
Wow.
Because she was very tall.
Yeah.
Tony
Sure.
Tennille.
Yeah.
So then we ransacked Tony Tennille's wardrobe. I said, we have 9 of these shows to do. We need a lot of drag for him.
Oh, how was he to work with?
He was wonderful.
Yeah.
He was just terribly, terribly uptight because he was gay and was, he was Papa Brady. And at the time, it was something that could just never get out. And he also was in kind of a terminal confusion because he had made his name on a very serious lawyer show called The Defenders with E.G. Marshall. And it was like L.A. Law later, or like I don't know, like Scandal, or what? I mean, one of these lawyer
Practice
shows
or something.
Yeah, I mean, it was a serious thing. It won lots of Emmys, and he was the young partner in the firm, and he was always getting awards for dramatic.
So he's on that dramatic track,
right? And then one thing or another happened after The Defenders, and a bunch of shows after didn't pan out. And so when they came along and they offered him this comedy thing, he took it, probably for the money, and it became a hit. And suddenly he was the father, a sitcom dad. And that was never what he wanted to be, and he was never really comfortable doing it.
Interesting.
But he adored these kids, and they all, were like childhood kids. They all had stories, and I mean, they were show business kids, but they had family behind them, and there was nobody saying to them, do this, do that. I mean, nobody really taking up. He felt he had to make sure that they weren't exploited. Wow. So he was quite. Cool. He was quite a guy. But
Lloyd,
and again, he couldn't live who he really was. So.
Yeah, when we had Lloyd on the show, he said they were not friends. Like Lloyd was not friends with.
Well, he wasn't warm.
Yeah,
he had
Lloyd's a strange character too.
Yeah,
so,
yeah, that's true. But I don't know. Well, Sherwood was running that show, wasn't he? Or was he off doing Gilligan's Island? Or
no, he was running the show, and then Lloyd was in charge.
Lloyd started as the dialogue coach for the kids, and then worked into
that's probably
production.
He was the heir apparent, and that's probably why they.
That's probably.
But he was a complicated guy, Bob, and I mean, I did like him a lot, but he was not comfortable in his own skin.
I get that. I totally get that. Okay. Hang on a second.
Yes.
We're going to switch gears for a second.
All right.
Tony Awards, Emmy Awards.
A lot of that,
and the Academy Awards, the Oscars.
The World Music Awards.
The World.
My God.
You've done them all.
It gets, really, I know, it gets better than that.
The Cable Ace Awards.
The Patsies, given to animals.
The Comedy Awards.
The Annies.
I did the Comedy Awards.
Yeah.
No, I never did a Kids' Choice because I'm allergic to slime. I know I'm a slime target, so it's like.
Yeah.
How long have you been writing the Oscars for?
Well, I did 23 years.
Oh my God! Do you still write on the Oscars?
I do. I write. I'm not on the staff of the show. I contribute.
Yeah.
But I mean, I did 23 years straight. You should pardon the expression. For before there was a change of a regime change at the Academy.
What about the Emmys? Same thing.
I don't know, maybe 8 of them, something like that. 8 or 10 over the years. For a long time, and the same with the Tonys.
Who's your favorite host to work with on those?
Well, I love her, and she's terrific. I mean, to say I have a favorite, I was my favorite conceptually was Steve Martin because he's so brilliant, and because he. They're all pretty fearless.
Moment,
but it's Steve, Whoopi, Billy. Those are the ones.
That moment with him where he busts Danny DeVito eating
Oh yeah.
during the show and then brings him some dip.
Well, yeah, exactly. That was my idea. That was actually my idea. I said, let's get him some dip. We ran back to the green room, Steve and I. And here's how nice Steve Martin is. There's some like dress extra, and she's putting dip, and he's standing there waiting. And we're going to go on stage, and he won't
There's a billion
elbow her
people.
aside. He's just waiting like, she'll be done in a minute. It'll be okay. And I say, excuse me, we have to do this as a prop. She runs away. Steve would never do that. He is totally a gent. I, of course, was, big, loud Jew moving around the room.
You kind of have to be, though, to make things happen.
Well, at a moment
little bit.
like that. But that was, we were watching it in the little cubicle that the host has off stage. We were watching it on the monitor. And we were watching Danny, because Danny had brought, they all brought food. He had, it was
log ceremony.
Bob Dylan it was on satellite from Australia, singing that song that he won for, with People Are Strange, that song. And it's really upbeat. And so they were cutting in, people were sitting in their seats and they were jiggling away. And Danny, I think, had produced a movie that was nominated. That's why he was there up front. And he pulled out a celery stalk. Said, this is too good. We have to serve it.
Oh, genius. That's amazing. So who was your, aside from Steve Martin, any other favorites?
Whoopi and Billy. And I had a good time with Letterman, although he had a terrible time.
Did he really?
Oh, he hated it, yeah.
They really panned that one. I thought he was pretty good, but the critics didn't like that.
He was great in the house. I mean, the critics didn't like him at all.
They didn't like the Oprah, Oprah thing.
Yeah. I told him it was a bad idea when I said,
what was the bit? I'm sorry.
That was basically the bit, was he introduced Oprah.
Uma Thurman was there because she was nominated for Pulp Fiction, and Oprah was there because she's Oprah. And he said, somebody started here tonight, Oprah, Uma. Do you know each other? Oprah, Uma, Oprah, Oprah, Uma. And he just, kept doing it. And of course they, and you could just see, like, this is nice, but I didn't come here to have you make fun of my name, TV boy.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, I'm here because I might win an Oscar. So it was. I said, this is probably not the smartest thing to do. And of course, that was the imp of the perverse. That he said, now I'm going to do it.
Right.
And Rob Burnett, who was his longtime writer, wrote it and gleefully takes credit for it.
Do you find that people, hosts sometimes think they're like, oh, I'm the funniest guy in the room. I'm gonna write my my own stuff, and then it doesn't go as well.
Well, not if they're smart. I mean, at a certain point, you have to know who you are and have your own confidence to do what's right. But I mean, when somebody gives you earnest advice, I mean, they're not trying to torpedo you; they're trying to help. So, I mean, I tell a story about Steve. We had a joke that we all loved for him to do coming out of the monologue. Mm-hmm. He was going to say, I have good news and bad news about the monologue. I've just been told. The bad news is my fly was open throughout the entire monologue. The good news is the camera puts on 10 pounds. And he said, that's a great joke. We've got to do that joke. And then he thought, I can't do it. It's a cock joke. I said, not a cock joke. It's a camera joke. And everybody knows it's a camera. It's an industry crowd and all that kind of stuff. And so finally he agreed he would do it. And as we were going on, he turned to me and he said, I can't do it. And so I turned to the stage manager and I said, we're cutting the cock joke. And the stage manager said, into what unfortunately was a live microphone, the cock joke has been cut. And everybody, actually, I could see Judi Dench going, cock joke? That was a cock joke?
Now, do you have some jokes that you remember that you wrote that didn't make the air? Like any favorites?
Oh, a lot. Yeah, a lot of. Well, this goes back quite a ways.
Please go back.
It was the year Richard Gere was presenting, and Billy was hosting, and there was a movie called An American Tale, which was the story of Fievel the mouse.
The mouse,
And so the joke was Richard Gere was going to present with Fievel, but Fievel backed out. And we were going to. The network censor, Mrs. Futterman, cleared it and said fine. And it was in. We were going to do it. And then we were sitting there. And here's how the Oscars are. There are like at the time, there were like 14 cameramen crawling all over the theater, and the place was lit like a soundstage. Yeah. And if you're sitting there and you're not nominated for something, and you're well known, and you see one of these cameramen crawling up the aisle towards you and setting up your shot, you know that something is going to be said about you.
Yes.
And so we're in the wings, and we're looking at all the monitors, and we're looking at Richard, and there's a guy on Richard's face, and that means there's a guy kneeling in the aisle
right there,
in
just
front of
shooting him.
Right. And Richard, like, color had drained from his face because he knew there was about to be a joke about him, and he had a good idea of what it was going to be about, because it was everything at the time. And so Billy just said, "Look at the guy; he's going to have a heart attack. I can't do this. I can't do this to him. He's too good a person." And so we cut it and we didn't use it.
Nobody said on the microphone, the gerbil in the ass joke got cut.
Gerbil in the ass joke.
The 5-0 joke is backed out. No, that was one of those once in a lifetime slips you live for.
That's amazing. Any other one you want to throw out there?
No. Well, things. I mean, sometimes you see something on the show and you'll say, "How did that happen?" Because you'll want to say something and you realize you're following something very serious, and it's a mistake to try and make fun of it. Yeah. There was a woman accepting an award, and she was wearing a weird dress with pom-poms on it, and the last thing she said, which nobody backstage heard, was to thank her son who had committed suicide. It was something. It was as horrible as it can be, and out comes whoever it was, Jon Stewart or somebody, to make a joke about the dress. Yeah. And you go,
it's just,
well, because he thought, why?
Because he didn't hear it.
He didn't hear it. I mean, that was funny, that her dress was funny. What do you mean? And then, but
he's just digging deeper and deeper.
Well, he didn't go, that was in his mind. Fortunately, he didn't go for savers. He just moved right along and to the next thing.
Now, who are some of the weirder hosts you've worked with?
Franco. I mean, Generalissimo Franco.
That's a bad.
James Franco. He was weird because he was he's not in his comfort zone. And,
it was him and Hathaway.
It was him and Hathaway, and Anne Hathaway is a precision instrument, and it was a bad pairing.
It was a weird combination.
It was a weird combination, and it never worked. And
it always seems weird when somebody is on that. Sometimes people, like, you see people do this on the Oscars or even on the Tony Awards, where they go up on stage and they try to pretend that they're not standing on stage in front of like 100 bajillion people. Yeah. And it doesn't feel right. It's like, that's why whenever Billy did it, or when Robin did it, or
those guys who are used to doing that every night, who know who they are when they walk out on stage. Right. Those are the ones who make good hosts. The ones who are actors who have to play a role make lousy hosts because they don't do that. They don't know how to do it if they're not in character. So you find somebody who has a stage persona already. I used to say years ago, you have to know who you are when you're on stage. Shirley MacLaine knows who she is. She knows who she was. So it makes it much easier. Yeah. But then people have forgotten that Shirley is as crazy as she is. Right.
Yeah.
Can we before we wrap things up, which I could stay with you forever. We can hang out all day. But I want to talk to you a little bit about Comic Relief, because it was such an enormous ordeal, and it really like changed so many people's lives.
Yeah,
and
it was great.
Did so much good for so many people. And you got to work with Robin and
Billy and Whoopi, and it was a response to the Reagan administration, which was cutting welfare programs and cutting. I mean, a lot of shelter programs. That was when we first noticed there was a homeless problem. Was when that Republican administration put people on the street. Yeah. So it was a response to that. The comics just coming in saying, we've got to take care of these homeless people because the government won't do it anymore. Wow. And it was Chris Albrecht, who was running HBO at the time, took it to his heart, and his college roommate Bob Zamuda organized Comic Relief, and it became a thing. We did 12 of them, and the last, it kind of it petered out in a way because the activist community got much more got larger from the time we started. There were so many causes and so many charities springing up, and people taking various causes and making them their own personal things, that there wasn't a lot of money left over. that you couldn't go on do a telethon and really raise enough money. So the last one we did, I think, was for Katrina. We didn't even do it for the homeless. We did it in New Orleans and Vegas simultaneously, and it was specifically for Katrina victims, because it just became kind of so. And then the Democrats came in, and more money began coming out, and the homeless problem is actually being dealt with by government, and if there had been a younger version of Billy, Robin, and Whoopi who wanted to take it up.
Yeah,
but that didn't emerge.
Yeah,
they had other interests, or they were growing in a different way. So,
God, what was it like working with Robin?
Oh, he was wonderful. I mean, he was brilliant and funny. And I used to say I would write stuff and I'd throw it in the cage, and he would devour it, and then he would do it on stage. And then a lot of what we did was just sitting and taping conversations. And improving, if I dare say that word, in this building, and then he would do it on stage, and people would say he's so spontaneous, and I'd say yes, the first time, which is the definition of spontaneity. Right. But then he would take it and he would embroider it, and by the time you saw it, most of the time on a HBO show or something, it was some stuff that he had done, that he had really worked on. But he was, I found him to be brilliant and bubbly and fun, and I know he was tortured, and I know, I spent a lot of time with him during his high coke period, and he would get into profound moods, and I never realized he was as depressed as he was. But I have to confess, like a lot of people, I didn't see him a lot in the last few years. After the heart attack and the divorce and the new wife, part of what he did was kind of isolate himself up there in San Francisco on that island with her, and emerge when he wanted to. I just know that he was the sitcom he did with Sarah Michelle Gellar. I was a heartbreaker because he really worked very hard on it, and I thought he was hysterical.
I thought he was great. He was wonderful.
The cast on that show was amazing.
It was, and I have a feeling that it didn't come back because it was an expensive show.
Yeah,
and when you have that kind of expense, you have to justify it in the returns. They had another show that Margot Martindale was on, The Millers, I think it was called.
Yeah,
that cost them a lot less to make, and was getting the same numbers.
Yeah.
And when you're talking to a network, you're talking to numbers crunchers.
Yeah, and the tricky part about that show too was that it was like in the first episode they were like, we're going to make the brands, because it was a show about advertising executives, right? And so they decided to make the brands real brands.
Yeah.
Right.
So the first episode was all about writing a new jingle for McDonald's. And then it was like, now we're going to do an episode about Target. Now we're going to do an episode about Best Buy.
That's why there was a girl in my acting classes on the show, because she was one of the Victoria's Secret girls on the show.
And every single person that's on that show is currently, I believe, on a series right now.
Yeah.
They have their own series.
That's true.
Yeah.
The star of Zoo.
Yeah.
The hot guy whose name I can't remember, sorry.
Yeah. And what's this? Linkletter's on that was on that show too. Hamish.
Oh, Hamish.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that also with Robin's brand, he was. It's hard to get older and do that stuff, to be fast and it's hard to reinvent yourself, and it's he's not alone in that. I mean, that happens to a lot of people. I remember when we were actually doing Donnie and Marie, Lucille Ball did one last series. Called Life with Lucy, where she was a grandmother, and she was trying to do all this physical stuff, and the audience would kind of gasp, like, she's going to hurt herself.
Ooh,
it was like she couldn't be Lucy Ricardo anymore.
Yeah.
Lucy Ricardo had to be a younger woman. It's kind of like, Roger Moore couldn't be James Bond because there was no way the audience would believe James Bond could do the stuff that he was doing when it was Roger Moore at 50 doing that stuff. And that's, they age out. Because James Bond has got to be James Bond.
Yeah. Well, listen, before we wrap up here, if we don't mention this, we're a couple assholes, and we're not. We're not a couple assholes.
There's three of us.
There's three of us, and none of us are assholes.
I'm kind of an asshole.
He's kind of an asshole.
Yeah.
I know,
but he's like my favorite. He's like my favorite kind of asshole. He's my asshole, which is Hollywood Squares, Center Square.
That was deep.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I tell people that they go, Matt Walker, he's such an asshole. I go, yeah, but he's my asshole. I get to hear him say horrible things about me all the time. It's like,
constantly.
we just to give you an idea, we just had this movie come out. This movie Storks came out.
Yeah, right.
Storks. What is that about?
It's a movie from Warner Brothers. Okay, I know. But when the movie was coming out and we were waiting for billboards and stuff, Secret Life of Pets, their billboards wherever they're. And me and Matt drive around all the time together. He picks me up and we go everywhere. And we're driving around. And he'd go, "Hey, look! It's the best animated movie of the year, Secret Life of Pets. They're not going to make a better movie with animals this year. Just do it every
single time.
Every time. Yeah, he's the best and the worst.
I would send him text messages late at night like, "Hey, check it out. Secret Life of Pets is playing at 10 p.m. at the ArcLight. You want to go?"
You son of a bitch. Hollywood Squares, Center Square. You got to tell us about working on Hollywood Squares.
Well, yeah.
That set? What's the set like? What's that place like?
Well, it's like a fire escape. It's like
Jim J. Bullock.
It's like you could do West Side Story on that set.
Was Jim J. Bullock the one?
No, Jim J. Bullock was in the '80s with Joan Rivers, and this was in the '90s. Whoopi.
That's right. Whoopi was on before.
They asked me to be the head writer, and then Whoopi said he should be on the show, and he should be the host.
Yeah.
And they thought, oh well.
They hired Tom Bergeron.
She's crazy, but they didn't want to piss her off that early, so they tested me with a whole bunch of other guys, with perfect teeth and builds. And, and this is for the win, Louise. And they said, well, you're not exactly host material, but we like your energy. We'd like to put you in the square. So they put me in the square next to Whoopi, and I realized I was there because they thought I could tame her.
Oh,
that would not doable. And besides, we discovered that she's really, a gay man, and I'm really a black woman. Yeah. As anybody who slept with me will tell you. So it was just, we had this little alliance going on, and it was fabulous fun. And we only did 36 days a year shooting. Wow. We would do it on weekends. We do 5. We do the whole week we'd come in the morning and do 3, and then take lunch with a lot of wine. And so the second afternoon shows were the ones that would air on Thursday and Friday. Yeah. And the audience that watches at home, by Thursday and Friday, they were just as loose as we were. So, so it was fine. They were having it was a fabulous experience.
What were some of the lines that got you in trouble? Or were
in trouble? I didn't know lines got me. I don't think. I remember I had a T-shirt. Of course, I wear T-shirts, and I had one that was the FedEx logo, and it said FedSex when you absolutely have to have it overnight. And they said, "Oh, FedEx is going to sue." I said, "It's parody, it's like parody." They said, "Yeah, but we appropriated it." I said, "That's part of the parody." I said, "It's and they're never going to really sue. They were just going to they'd
raise a stink
go away, because their lawyers are bigger than your lawyers." So we had to pixelate the thing, which of course made everybody suddenly they were writing calling, saying what was the filthy thing on his shirt. And all that. It was a fascinating experience, because you would get like the guy from Little Rock who ran the show on his station would call up the network affiliate, the syndicated affiliate guy, and say, he's funny. Why does he have to be so gay? And Whoopi would say she gets the same thing. Why does she have to be so black? Can't she be like
so black,
like Diane Carroll?
Black.
Can't she be like a little less black? So it was. But I will tell you, I have many favorite moments. But we would give away a car or a big trip at the end of the thing, and. One day there was a guy, his name was Tyrone, and he was from Compton, and he won. And he was the night watchman at the Wells Fargo Bank in Compton. And he won a trip to Israel. And when he won you won a trip to Israel, and the audience went, and there was a place where, Israel? The hell I want to go to Israel for? And started in. And Whoopi, of course, got all black. She said, Tyrone, it's the promised land. It's the holy land, Tyrone. And suddenly it was a revival meeting. And we had a guy... a Puerto Rican guy who had won on the previous day's show. He had won a trip to Puerto Rico. So he swapped. He wanted to go to Israel. So he went to Israel, and Tyrone went to Puerto Rico.
Wow.
Now, as a writer, you've written on a lot of things, and we've all had this happen, I know, where we've written a joke, and you're sure it's going to be the funniest thing on the entire show.
Yeah.
And you do it, and it's just death.
Yes.
Like, what's...
Oh, yeah.
Is there anything that stands out in your mind? Like there was something you were like,
yeah.
this is going to be great, and then it just died?
Yeah. On the Oscars one year, the theme, we had a producer, Gil Cates, who loved themes, and the theme was women.
Mm-hmm.
And it was the year of the woman, and it was not the year of the woman. There was, nothing. It was the year, actually, of Basic Instinct.
Oh, okay.
And so the joke that Billy had was, it's interesting if this is the year of the woman because the biggest part of any woman this year was Sharon Stone in Basic Instinct, and which was funny because she crosses her legs and flashes her beaver, and unfortunately it followed a heartbreaking clip reel of famous women in movies. And at the end of it, the audience was in tears, and he comes out with this twat joke. Shit. And it was like the Hindenburg. It disintegrated in front of us. It was an awful moment.
That's amazing.
But I have to say, and then of course they cut to Sharon, who was kind of going,
Yeah.
like this is what's wrong with Hollywood is they're making a twat joke. And then he said, Billy did something. He just said, well, moving on. I mean, he didn't linger. He didn't try to do any savers or anything. He, again, just moved right along. But it was a horrifying moment. And it was all it was all our faults because we hadn't seen the movie. We'd seen the movie in rehearsal once, but it didn't have the effect on us that it had on the audience.
Sure.
Because they were much more invested in the idea of doing a show about women, but it really wasn't. I mean, those themes were always sort of grafted on, like it's a way to make one show different from the next, which is what the movies do every year. They're different movies.
Well, Bruce, you're a trailblazer in this business. But you are like still a force of nature to be reckoned with. And anybody that is lucky enough to get to work with you or get to hang out and chat with you. I met you. First time I met you was in the ArcLight Cinema in an elevator. For 4 seconds, I was wearing a funny T-shirt. You were wearing a funny T-shirt. We shared a moment. By the way, you need to start a T-shirt company if you don't already have.
I had one for a minute, but it's just people don't spend money on that enough.
Well,
because I keep trying to find new T-shirt companies online as a customer, and
they just keep.
They'll go belly up.
Have you been to T-Fury? You go to tfury.com?
T-Fury. T-shirt Hell is my favorite.
Oh, T-shirt Hell's great.
T-shirt Hell is brilliant. T-shirt Hell makes onesies for a Baby Hell. Is the child division, and I get them every time friends of mine have babies. I get them the onesie.
That's great.
It says "They shake me."
That's so great. That's awesome. I love it. Well, listen, it's an absolute honor and a pleasure to have you on the show.
You.
To sit and chat with just a couple of schmucks. Where can people find you if they want to look you up or look at things? Instagram, Twitter, any of these things?
It's sort of. WeGotBruce.com is probably the best place to, and unless they see me on Facebook, I am there, but there are like 6 Bruce Vilanches. So
do you ever use Twitter or Instagram? Any of that stuff?
Twat not. I find people hire me to write that.
Yeah,
tweet,
yeah.
so
you don't need to be putting that stuff up for free. No
You're
way.
reading his stuff, but it's not under his name.
Absolutely.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Mike, where can people find you in the world?
At Mike Black Attack for all social media.
You bet.
All right.
Matt, where about you?
You can find me funnymatt.com. I got links to everything. Or if you're annoyed by me, let me know at mattwalkersucks.com.
I don't think I'm the only one that hates you.
You're the only one who
Everybody
actually
else-
submits things.
Yes. And of course, you get me at Stephen Glickman, STPHEN, Glickman on Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube. This has been the Nighttime Show. Don't forget to subscribe to the show and leave comments on the iTunes and all that jam and all that jazz and all that jelly and jam. We adore you, Bruce. You're incredible.
Thank
Thanks
you.
a lot, Bruce Vilanch. Thanks for being here.
Oh!